Welcome to the High Agency Podcast with your host, Noah Ravoy.
To retake the West, we must retake our own agency. And that means taking personal responsibility for ourselves. My guest today, Christopher Jersey Pick, is an expert at helping men to take control of their lives. And he founded something called TheBeardReport. Welcome, Chris. I'm looking forward to speaking to you today about what you're doing to help men.
Yeah, man, I'm looking forward to it. Should be good.
Yeah, excellent. So when I first heard about you on Twitter, I heard the Beard Report, and naturally I said, that sounds like something I'd be interested in. And I went and took a look at it. And it's funny, it's called the Beard Report, but it's not specifically about beards. Tell us a little bit about what it's about and how you got to that decision.
Yeah, sure. So the concept for the Beard Report actually started way back before I even had a concept to start a website, start writing, start anything. I kind of attribute it back to going through high school. I never felt totally connected to the other kids around me in high school, and it always confused me. And then as I continued to grow through college, now to where I'm at now, I've kind of finally pinpointed it, and it's just I'm operating from a different philosophy, a philosophy that I defined and created to my own values. And I think that's kind of the disconnect. So that's the whole principle, the whole genesis behind the Beard Report. So I'm writing to that effect about that topic and kind of giving the readers what I like to think of as a skeleton based on the four tenets that I have defined, being strength, discipline, integrity, and leadership, to give the people a skeleton by which to define their own philosophy, flesh it out with the things that are specific to them and their values, and then use that to then move forward and build a life that they define rather than the society and the world defining for them.
Absolutely. Yeah. So it is something that we have lost in the West is intergenerational passed on value systems. The 60s saw really the beginning of anything goes value system. Now, there were individuals who promoted that before, but it really never took on in society. And I think after the First World War, people were so emotionally broken over the things that they'd seen in the war and whatnot, that there was a generation of men who were either dead in the war or dead inside after having gone through that. And they weren't able or willing, or for some reason they didn't pass on that wisdom of how to operate as a man in the world onto their sons. And to some degree, the sons decided to reject it, even if it was passed on. And so in many parts of the world, we have a complete lack of masculine culture. When we talk about culture, Western culture, and people will think, McDonald's and Hollywood, and that's the kind of sports, pro sports and things like that. That's not really part of Western culture. That's a cult that's been imposed upon us over top of our actual culture, and our actual culture has almost been completely erased. And the types of things that you're talking about is a return to the masculine culture that we used to have. Yeah,
for sure. I think kind of what you were saying about the sports, and I even attribute it to pop culture. Just the way that we interact with the world today is so loud. There's so much of it. Even if you did have that masculine culture, it's just under constant barrage and constant attack from the outside. Unless you are super, super strong and super strong footed on a super strong foundation, just the volume of noise, something's going to break through. And then once you get that one crack, right, it's structurally compromised, and there's a pathway for more and more to get in. And then pretty soon you're pretty far away from where you started. So I'm trying to reverse that and bring everything back within that was either forfeited to the external or stolen by the external, and trying to bring that all back within and kind of have people build from that strong foundation forward.
Yeah, I think most men recognize something is wrong. We don't always know what's wrong or where to go for a solution. But we even see in the rise in male suicides is an expression that men know something is wrong. And when they really get desperate and can't solve the problem, they end up taking a permanent type of option on their solution there. And what you're doing, what I see other men doing as well, giving these men opportunities, an option. Okay, here is a way to solve your problems. Here is a way forward. And what you've got, it's a flexible framework, which allows men then to adapt that to what their particular needs are. That's really important right now. We really need that in order to counter not just the pop culture, the destruction of culture, that kind of a globalist culture that we have foisted upon us now, but also just to keep men alive. One of the things you mentioned, strength, and that's very important because men love struggle, and you only really love struggle if you're strong.
Yeah.
Weak people don't love struggle. Strong people love struggle because it's great. You struggle, you win. Sometimes you lose, but even when you lose, you made a good show of it. You really put your effort in. And helping men to get to that point where they can love struggle again, it turns a lot of the things that we're facing from an adversarial standpoint to how does this make me stronger? How does this make me better? And that mindset shift towards looking for strength rather than looking for comfort, I think it's very, very important for men today.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think part of the appreciation of struggle and enjoying the struggle is having the confidence in your skills and abilities that you will overcome, right? So if you're weak and you think that you are weak and you can't see how you can overcome struggle, well, it's better to avoid it altogether, right? But if you're strong, if you're able, if you're confident and you have skills to overcome, it's no longer such a scary thing. Now it becomes a challenge of, well, how am I going to get through this? What is going to be my strategy? What tactics am I going to employ to get through this? So it, somewhat of a chicken and the egg situation, right? Does struggle make you stronger, or do you need to be strong to then become stronger from struggle? I think the answer in either case is start training, and the mindset's gonna change, right?
Yeah, get into it and find out once you're there. No, I think a lot of things are a mutually reinforcing cycle, and the issue is for many young men, the cycle never got started. So they never got on that virtuous cycle of get strong, suffer, get stronger, suffer, something more intense, and like back and forth as they work their way up. And really, that's usually something your father introduces you to. Your mother doesn't go, oh yeah, jump off that big thing, I bet you can lift that big rock. Mom's like, careful, don't get hurt. Right. Put the sunscreen on. Don't go outside. Someone can kidnap you. Stay inside, play video games. Are you hungry? Eat more. And that's fine. That's nothing wrong what the mother is doing when it's in balance with the father's. That nurturing isn't a problem, but you need the father's boundary setting as well. That no, you're too comfortable. You need to go get uncomfortable for a while, and challenging the son and pushing the son. And I really think initially your strength comes from your father, not from you. So the father telling you that you can do it, even when you don't believe you can do it, you rely on his strength a little to experiment, to try something. Yeah. And when it works out, there's a reinforcement that, hey, that worked. I can do that again. But farther and faster and stronger and harder, whatever. And you start on that cycle yourself. And a lot of young men, they just never get on that cycle until they come across something like what you're doing or what I'm doing. And then we help get them on that cycle. And it can be done even as an adult.
Yeah, absolutely. It's never too late to start, right? You can't control what has already transpired. You can only take control of now and set yourself on a trajectory forward. But yeah, I agree with you. When you're a kid and you don't know any better, you're relying on, the external, the community around you. And if you're not getting it, you're not going to know. You're not going to start off. So yeah, I agree with what you're saying. It's definitely important to have that strong father figure that's going to get you off the couch and go do some hard work, do some yard work, whatever it is, to balance the nurturing that is coming from the mother's side.
Yeah, you mentioned community, and we joke with the idea that it takes a village to raise a kid, and really, mom and dad can raise the kid, but there are advantages to being part of the village, being part of a community. And as a young man, you will see your father interacting with other men. How does he interact with them? How do they show each other respect? If your dad is in a leadership position, how does he manage that? How does he take care of the people he's supposed to lead? What is leadership? You got to see it to know what it is. You can't go look in a dictionary and find, oh, that's leadership. Okay, I'm going to be a leader. You got to see it in real life.
Right.
And if maybe he's more of a follower, which is perfectly fine. Not everybody can be a leader, or we'd never have any groups. We'd all be groups of one.
Right.
Then how does he contribute to the group? How does he show respect for leadership? How does he contribute to the group? How is he taken care of by leadership and shown respect? How does that mutual interaction work? And if you're a young man and your parents are living in a vacuum, you don't have any community, you miss out on that entire aspect of masculinity that you really only get through community. And I think we've lost that as well. And even people who are trying to rebuild their families, we can be I don't know if you're a father or not, but we can be the best parents we possibly can and still miss out on teaching our kids things because we're not part of a community. And that's part of it is, that rebuilding again. You mentioned leadership is one of the aspects that you're looking at. And part of that is you got to have someone to lead. You got to be in a community, be part of a community.
Yeah, absolutely. There's definitely something to be built as an individual, and then there's the whole other half of it of the community side of it. And I think another important part to leadership is you don't need to be the leader. The concept of leading from any position is also important too. So maybe you're not the number one guy in the group. However, there are still people around you that you affect, and you can lead, as a part of the larger community and of the larger group as well.
Yeah, leadership's fractal. You're probably, almost no one is at the very, very, very top of a hierarchy. Usually we're at the top of one part, and then they're below us. There's the fractal, and there's others that are at the top of their parts, and we're underneath some other hierarchy. And that's how society cooperates, is through that fractal leadership fractal that spreads out and allows it to encompass everyone.
Yeah.
Now it was strength. There was strength and there was leadership. And what were the other two again?
Discipline and integrity.
Tell me about discipline. How do you develop discipline? Because I think a lot of people, if you had no parents or no father, or you had a tyrannical father, you'll end up with one or the other dysfunctional view of discipline. But what's a healthy view of discipline that we can have for ourselves?
So I think the healthy view of discipline and the definition of discipline that I write about all starts with the philosophy and the values. And the philosophy and the values are the foundation that starts everything, right? So once you can define what your values are for yourself and what your philosophy is, then the discipline becomes pretty easy because you're taking action out of need rather than out of want, which would be the opposite of discipline, which would be like a motivation. So once you define what those values are and what that philosophy is, and then you have a clear view of what it is you need to do to live to that philosophy and live to those values and manifest that. The discipline is just the showing up every day, regardless of whether you want to or not, or whether it's fun or not. This is what I'm doing. This is what's important to me, and it needs to get done. So it's going to get done. That's really the large idea of it, is that it doesn't rely on circumstance. It doesn't rely on external motivations or external, really anything, right? All of that is within you, and there is that drive within you to go achieve what it is you want to achieve.
Yeah, I noticed lately you've been writing about the limitations of accountability. And could you tell us a little bit more about how discipline and the limitations of accountability fit together?
Sure. Yeah. Yeah. So, um, I think accountability has gotten far too big of a concept. You hear accountability everywhere. It's become a word that is the default for many people when they're talking about what really is discipline, what really is showing up. And the the stance that I am taking towards accountability is great and it's got its place. But the thing about accountability is that something needs to happen first for then someone to be accountable for it. Whereas if we focus on discipline rather than accountability, discipline happens long before whatever that event that happens that someone is held accountable to. Um, so if we focus on discipline and we make commitments and meet the commitments and we plan our work in a disciplined manner, well, accountability doesn't need to be discussed anymore because we're not looking for anyone to hold accountable for anything. Um, so it's the proactive approach to what accountability is trying to resolve. And I'm trying to change the commentary around accountability and personal responsibility and all that stuff to bring it internal, and have it take an effect before something happens. The other side of it too is accountability is a two-party system. It By definition, there is someone who is held accountable and someone who is holding that person accountable, which again is, I like to say, it's outsourcing discipline, right? Someone else is going to hold me accountable for something that I need to do rather than me holding myself to a high standard of discipline to go and achieve what that thing is.
Yeah, it sounds like, this is a thing that I've always thought with accountability. It's it's got a place in the very early point of a person working towards agency. So when their agency is very low, or sometimes it's high in some areas, low in others, their agency is very low, or the person who's holding them accountable isn't just holding them accountable, but perhaps also trying to figure out what is going wrong in the way that they organize themselves. But once you've got to a point where you're sufficiently developed, it becomes a crutch. It prevents you from finishing developing your own discipline so that you can do it on your own. And I'm always I'm a big fan of having multiple systems to not make you, but to push you in the right direction. So that mix of social pressure, which is kind of accountability in a way, the social pressure, accountability, people that depend on you to be successful so that you have a good reason to go out and do it, plus discipline, and just it all together works synergistically to encourage you to do the right thing. But there is I think to a large extent, what ends up happening is accountability gets promoted because someone can get paid to be the one holding someone accountable. And it's kind of, there's a lot of therapy. It's like that. Tell me about your parents or your childhood. And then next week, it's the same thing over and over and over again. And it doesn't mean that can't be part of an effective therapy session or an effective coaching session, but you need to move beyond that. You need to diagnose the problem and then move beyond it. And I think with accountability, sometimes we get stuck in the in that early stage of development and don't move people out of it. My goal always with coaching is to get people to the point where they don't need me anymore.
Right.
At least for normal parts of life. If they want to take on a new challenge, then they come back. They have something new. I need someone to, work through this problem with. Then I'm there for them, but they shouldn't need my help to get up every day and go about their life if they've been getting coaching for 6 months or a year. They should be able to do all that on their own.
Right. Yeah. And that's when accountability is the go-to, the reason for doing something is not because you need to do it. It's because, I don't want to have to go answer to somebody else that I didn't do it, which is not the approach. I have been writing about that quite a bit, and just trying to bring that back into a disciplined perspective to the same end, right? You're achieving, you're doing what you should be doing, but it's for your reasons on your terms rather than yeah. And you made a good point. Yeah, accountability is a great thing to sell, but if it is working towards helping the person rather than continuing for them to remain in that situation where they rely on that accountability.
Yeah, and I think there is a certain percentage of the population that they require more accountability than other people, and it's always been that way. There's always been, if you look back in the ancient history of Europe, or the medieval times in the manor, there were some people that had to hear they rang the bell in the morning, let people know what time it was, and there was always someone that was late to get out to the field consistently, and they needed to have someone come along and say, get your ass going. We got to move. Generally, though, those weren't the people in society who made the decisions and were the people who made society progress forward. And we understand the need to hold each other accountable in a group of friends, and I think that's different. And people overlap that. If you have a group of male friends and someone is not pulling their weight, or you have a business or a project with a bunch of guys and someone's not pulling their weight, yeah, we got to hold them accountable for it. That's very different than that kind of daily accountability, which is super powerful for guys just starting out, but it's extremely limiting once you get really going and get on your feet.
Yeah, and that goes back to kind of the redundancy you were talking about, and I'm totally with you there. And yeah, the community is important. It's important to be around people that will hold you accountable and call you on your shit, right? Because no one's going to be vigilant 100% of the time. It's not a reasonable expectation. The expectation should be to do it as often and as consistently as possible, but it will never be 100%. And in those times, that's when your community steps in and picks up the slack. I'm a big fan of saying, don't strive to be the lone wolf, but don't be afraid of it either, right? So if you're not in a community that is, supporting you and is going to call you on your shit when you're not performing, that's probably not a community that you want to stay around. Also, don't sacrifice what you are and what you're about to fit into a community. So in those instances, maybe you should break out and spend more time as the lone wolf, but don't. There's the tendency that I've seen in some people to build their identity around being that lone wolf, and that's not really the best alternative either. Be the lone wolf until you can go find a pack that more closely aligns with your values, and that is going to support you in that way.
And even when we are in a pack, very often we have to go off and do things on our own. There's not someone watching us all the time, watching over our shoulder. And so we need to be able to have that ability to operate independently when we need to, and then go back to the pack when we need that help. And I think it really is a balance. And for men that are starting out developing discipline, that balance part's going to be very difficult for them. And it's why it's important to find a mentor that's going to help you to talk through that and understand where the balance is. Those aren't things that they just pop into our head and we automatically know them. They're not instinctual. And in fact, most of the things that are social to do with human interaction are not particularly instinctual. We learn them through exposure to them. And if we're behind in that, if we're in our 20s and we're not quite where we want to be, we're in our 30s, we're not where we want to be, we got to go and talk to someone who has got their life more together and who can help us with that process of figuring out where are we missing and where are the holes in our functionality, and fix those. Strength, leadership, discipline, and what was the other one?
Integrity.
What does integrity mean to you?
Yeah, so integrity, I use it in two different definitions. So there's the one maybe more commonly accepted when you're acting with integrity, and that's acting with moral uprightness and all that stuff. And again, I'm going to drive it back to philosophy and back to values, because that code that you are acting with integrity toward has to be defined. Otherwise, there's nothing there that you're acting with integrity to. And in this one, in integrity specifically, I think a lot of times people think about religion providing what that code is, or their community, whatever. It's acting consistent with the values of the community around you, rather than the values and the values that and philosophy that you hold. So that's the first part of it. The second part of it is more along the lines of structural integrity and the integrated whole, right? So the tenet of integrity ties all four of the tenets together, in that all four tenets are a part of that foundation and a part of that life that we're talking about building. So those are the two main philosophies and main uses of integrity when we're talking about building not only the philosophy but then the life that goes along with it.
Yeah, integral. So like a complete man.
Yes.
That is something that I notice. I come across this quite often, is that very few men are unsuccessful at everything. Usually there's something they're good at, but very few men are that full thing. They're successful at on one of the aspects of their life. They're successful at making money. They're successful at making friends and relationships and taking care of their health and their fitness and all of that stuff. And that's really hard. That's a lot of work to do that. And it's not something you can go, yeah, I think I'm going to catch up to someone who, I'm 10 years behind. I'm going to catch up, and you're going to do it in a month or 2 months.
Right.
Maybe you can get fit pretty quick. I've seen guys getting, 6 months in, massive physical changes. They're not going to do all of those things all at once. And
right.
For a lot of guys, I have people come to me and they say, I'm great at making money. I work with men. We all work with other men. None of us talk to women. We don't know how. I don't know anything about relationships, but I want to get married and have kids. I want to have a family. And, they're really good at what they do, but they're also, they have that struggle, that difficulty. And it's, somewhere along the lines, they're not being a complete man. Their life isn't complete, and they're unhappy with that. Right. And I think a lot of guys, they get stuck unhappy with something and they go, well, I should just be happy because I got this one other thing that works. Right. I should be happy with my terrible marriage because I got a good job. I'm totally unhappy at home. I'm happy at work. That's good enough. That should be good enough for me. And for a lot of men, it's like, stop accepting good enough.
Yeah,
stop
for
accepting survival, and go and figure out what areas of your life are your weak spots and fix them. I know men who, every area of their life is awesome. They still come to me to say, what's next? There's got to be something after getting all my ducks in line. Everything's working. What do I do next? Now I'm at my highest power level. What do I do next? And actually, that's some of the most exciting coaching to do, is with guys who have their stuff together and they want to make a massive change in the world. And how do they do that? Where are they going to go next? What are they going to invest their time and energy into to take everything that they've been working on for decades and turn it into a real legacy? So yeah, it's I really like that concept. That concept of integrity, I think, is very, very important for men today.
Yeah, absolutely. And you were talking about, when a person is very proficient in one area, but not so much in these other ones. I think some people may equate that to a lack of balance, right? Now, I'm not a fan of thinking of balance. In fact, I like to think rather as not getting pulled too far off of center, right? Because if you try to achieve balance and you try to hit everything at the same time, you're going to fail at everything equally, right? So I think having a strong concept of what that center is and the radius that you can work in without getting pulled too far off in one direction gives you a little bit more flexibility to then put more of your resources into one pursuit and go get that developed. And once that's to a comfortable level, move to the next one and the next one. And I think that increases efficiency. It increases how you use your resources, and you're not trying to, maintain 10 things. You are doing one or two things all in and just keeping a status on the other eight, so that they're not diminishing, but you're also not trying to build them, because it's impossible to keep track of all of that at the same time.
Yeah. For example, I have twins that are a little over a year old. So I haven't slept for about 14, 16 months, something like that. They're about 16 months now. I haven't slept for about 16 months. And that makes a massive impact on my ability to go out and implement my money-making goals. And, there's phases in a man's life. There's times when he's got to go out and make money, stack up that cash. If it's crypto, stack up your crypto, whatever it is. And then there are times when you got to be like, let's just kind of maintain it. Well, I also raise a family, or maybe now it's time for me to just hold that and let it go. And I got to go get in shape better again. I've let that go. I have a client, and, he just finished a course, and he says, everything's great in my life. But he said, I'm becoming in a leadership position in my community, and I'm not as fit as I'd like to be. And it sounds kind of funny that, you think normally he used to be really fit. He's a big guy, and you think getting fit. Oh yeah, getting muscles and getting fit. That's a young man's game. That's something for you to do in your late teens, early 20s, right? But it's interesting. This is a man in his late 40s, and he's recognizing that is part of his path to his next step in his life. Men don't respect men to be leaders of them who aren't physically fit. And so he recognizes that, and he's taking that on as his next challenge. But he wouldn't be able to focus on that if he was also building everything else in his life. Maybe he had little kids, and he had, he just started a business, and just starting this and the other thing. And so that's really smart. Pick the thing you're focusing on for the next 3 to 6 months and maintain everything else. And life tends to be like that. Life tends to be cycles. You're not going to be constantly in a state of growth in every area of your life. And if you expect that, you're going to end up getting overwhelmed and kind of depressed because you think you're not hitting these goals that, you imagine that you could hit.
Yeah, big time. Nothing's going to move very fast if you're trying to hit everything. Then the other risk you run is, because you're overwhelmed and because nothing's moving fast enough, you're going to start looking for shortcuts. You're going to start looking for, things that are more long shots. So when we were talking about, investments or crypto or whatever, maybe you're taking the riskier investment, or you didn't do all the due diligence because instead of doing the due diligence to make a good investment, you were also focusing on all this other stuff. So and that's part of the discipline too, is understanding what your limitations are. You only have a finite time. It's not an excuse. Always push yourself to do more, but understand that there is a limit that you're going to hit. That approach of not trying to balance and hit everything at the same time kind of helps to that end as well.
Yeah, I think balance got a bad reputation because of people misusing the word. So, I tell people, they said to me, what do you eat? I was sick years ago, very, very sick for about 7 years, nearly died from it because my digestion collapsed. I couldn't digest anything, any food. And I ended up, my wife, I was basically slowly starving to death because nothing would digest. And I ate some raw meat and I felt great. And so for a while, all I ate was raw meat. People would say, what do you eat? And I'd be like, oh, I just eat raw meat now. That's all I eat. Like, you need a balanced diet. And I'm like, a balanced diet just about killed me. If I eat a vegetable, it feels like I'm being stabbed in the guts. I can't digest them. And I think a lot of people, they take this idea of balance and they're like, you need some bad with your good. Have that clean glass of water, but you really should put some dirt in it because it's too clean. And that's where the balance idea got off, is from people using it as an excuse. Oh, you're going to go exercise? Well, that's great. But then you should really eat a chocolate cake to compensate for it and balance it out. And if you achieve perfect balance, you'd also achieve perfect mediocrity. You'd be just a medium, ordinary person. And hey, so that's fine for some people. That wasn't fine for me. just surviving isn't good enough for me. I wanted to do better than that. And sometimes to get higher up than that, I had to temporarily unbalance so that I could, take that next step up the ladder in my life. And I think that wrong application of the concept of balance has put people completely off the idea, especially men, and it's been often a way to temper our masculine enthusiasm. Men tend to be somewhat obsessive. We see something we want to accomplish and we will put 100% into that thing until we've accomplished it. And the reality is everything great that humanity's ever achieved is because a man got obsessed with something and he either fixed it or he died trying. And, flight. I mean, the Orville and Wilbur, what's her name? I was going to say Redenbacher. It's not Redenbacher.
Right.
Yeah. The first guys to fly in the U.S., that was a death trap. Like, they're lucky that they died. They're basically, it's like, we're going to fly or we're going to die.
Yeah.
And that didn't really stop them. It's not even like they're like, look, there's two of us. Maybe one should get on the plane. It's like, no, let's both get on. We're both going to do this. And that attitude of men of, make it or die trying, that obsession should not be tempered, especially in younger men, because they really need to do that huge leaps up. They need to learn how to balance risk, of course. But that, telling a man who absolutely wants to invent the next best thing that he needs just slow down, have some balance, and spend some time staring off into the woods. That might be what he needs, but it also might be a way to take away his power of his focus. And for men, that ability to focus is really what makes us. It's why men earn more money than women. It's because we can focus better. We can put all of our distractions away. And the women that can do this earn better even than most men. But we can put all our distractions away. We can focus on that one thing we're doing and nothing else matters. We don't get hungry. We don't get thirsty. We don't get tired. We just focus on that one thing until we've accomplished it. And, women in general don't need to do that. They need to focus on multiple things. They got to think about, maybe they're working, they got to think about their work, they got to think about their kids, they got to think about what's happening at home. And so they have this like multiple things going on in their head, and they don't need to get that deep into anything. And for men, though, this is how we change the world. You're not going to do anything life-changing or world-changing if you don't get really focused and deep into it. And even to be the integral man, if you figure out what your weakness is and you focus on that till it's not your weakness anymore, then you pick the new thing that's your weakness. Keep fixing that weakest link. Make sure it's not the weakest link, and then pick the next thing and focus on that. And if we did that every 3 months, end of the 3 months, we take a nice evaluation. Where's my weak spot? Okay, that's my weak spot. I'm going to hold everything else in a holding pattern. I'm not going to grow it or shrink it. It's going to stay where it is.
Right.
I'm going to focus for the next 3 months on that thing that I'm not good at, that thing I lack. And then at the end of the 3 months, you evaluate it again. Do I need to go another 3 months? Or, hey, I fixed that problem.
Right.
If men did that, they would see massive growth.
Yeah, it would be massive, and it'd be consistent, right? It would keep going up at the same trajectory. It wouldn't be, all these waves. It's a great approach, and it's an approach I'm taking with the Beard Report right now. So I've got my 4 tenets. Every month, I'm moving my writing and my content around to each specific one. And then in 4 months, I'll come back to the beginning and we'll start again, and it'll just keep going cyclically. And it's all towards that integrity, that integral philosophy, that integral person. That's the way to do it.
People say I've heard people say to me, how can you focus on, let's say it's strength. How can you focus on strength for an entire month? And I'll say, you don't really get into the depth of something unless you focus on it for a long period of time. You have to really think about it. You have to, and writing is a great way to take all that information that's in your head out, get it into an organized format. Our mind is somewhat chaotic. Even if we're a highly organized person, there's somewhat of chaos in the mind. And writing takes that chaos and structures and orders it, not just on the paper, but at the same time, it's structuring and ordering it inside of our mind. So writing about the topics that are important to us is extremely important. I actually started writing before I was doing these videos. And the issue is the videos reach a lot more people, but the writing was originally for me. I wrote for me to take the ideas that I was observing. I'd observe in 20, 30 young men, essentially the exact same problem.
Yep.
And so I would start to write about that problem as a way to think through the process of helping them solve it. And then I would leave the solution there for other men to read. And, if you came to me with that problem, I'd say, go read that article and then we're going to talk about it.
Right.
Read that post. And, that reaches a certain segment of the population, but it tends to reach the people who are more predisposed to reading and intellectual pursuits, and doing the videos helps you to reach a wider audience as well. And I think the ideal is if you can make a mix of those. So it's, do you do any videos, by the way?
I don't. I've been trying to develop a podcast of myself and put that out there for all the reasons you're saying, right? It reaches a different audience, a wider audience. And it's a little bit more easy to take in. The podcast give you the opportunity to listen while you're driving and all that stuff, rather than having to focus on reading.
Yeah, even if after you're done reading a post, you just read it. Like, you wrote a post and then you just read it and just put that at the top of the post, that read it or listen to it here.
Right.
Might be an interesting way to do it. I went back through a lot of my old posts, and I'm starting to prepare one-on-one, like just me talking conversations, to try to take that information and make it in a very easily digestible way for people. And it's a lot of fun too to go back to your old writing and look at it and see how your ideas have evolved, and to say, okay, look, I can see that I'm scratching at the surface of a problem here that now I know the solution to. Right. And you can see that growth that you've got. And I think it's humbling, and it is also inspiring at the same time, because we're working with really serious problems. These are societal problems. These are things that, the rise and fall of men is the rise and fall of society. If we're not there to defend society, there isn't any society to defend. Right. And figuring out how to help men with those areas that we're helping them with, the things that you're working with as well. This is big deal. This is just a huge thing. And reading what we're doing and seeing ourselves progress, it's great, because it gives us that hope that the problems we're facing, they're solvable. They're solvable in our lifetime, and they're solvable by men like you and I, ordinary men, and that there's a lot of men out there really looking for the information that we're providing. They need that help. A lot of underfathered or not fathered at all young men, or men whose fathers weren't a good example, which you could call underfathered as well. They really need this help, and it's something we're providing for the future.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think another part of it too is you don't know what you don't know, right? I think you were saying earlier, we feel that there's something wrong. There's something not right, but we can't put our finger on it. We don't know what it is. We don't know how to fix it. So just putting content out like this, maybe someone comes across it, maybe it strikes a chord, maybe it starts a path of self-study that leads to the answer that they were looking for. It not only defines and puts a context around what the problem is that they're feeling, and then also, hey, here's what you could look at, what you could work on to improve upon that situation.
Yeah, earlier in the week, a young man said to me, he says, I listened to a whole bunch of your video interviews, and he says, hearing men talk so openly about politically incorrect masculine things, he says, I finally realized that it's safe for me to start thinking and talking about these things, that I'm not crazy. I'm not the only one who recognizes there's something wrong here. And, even when you don't know what the answer is, talking in a constructive way about the problem, trying to identify and working at that phase of the solution, stimulates other people to get involved in the process of solving it. And, you aren't going to solve the world's problems. I'm not going to solve the world's problems. we're going to add our one grain of sand to this castle. And together we're going to build it. Some people are going to add a little more, some people are going to add a little less. But every man who wants to participate in the rebuilding of Western civilization, in the recreation of our culture, is going to get a chance to do that. And, listening to what other people are saying, synthesizing it together, coming up with, sometimes it's not necessarily you come up with a completely new idea. It's that you hear two ideas that each include half of the solution. And maybe you're the first one to go, you could put those things together and have a complete solution.
Right.
And then you go out and share that. I think for young people who are listening to this, or even older people, you might think, well, I'm not going to do a podcast. That's a lot of work. I don't want to write. You might have one article in you to write, and that's it.
Right.
One thing that you feel is so important, you need to write about it. Write about it. Write about it, share it with your friends, get excited about it. Maybe that's your one grain of sand to contribute to the castle. Don't think that because you're not going to make a career out of this stuff, that you can't somehow contribute to the growth of culture and civilization. You can do your little part. And in fact, we need you to do that. 1,000 guys contributing one article. I mean, it's going to take a long time for us to write 1,000 articles, 1,000 long form articles. You get 1,000 people doing it. There's a lot of potential there. And when you take information like that and you put it out, you're throwing up a flare saying, I care about this topic. This is important to me. And other people for who it's also important, they're going to see that and they're going to say, I'm going to talk to this guy about this thing. This is important to both of us. And this is how communities form. People start talking about things which they share mutually, which are important to the group. And eventually that nucleus, it builds it around it, a community. And then you really see the power of communal problem solving. Any problem that we can solve individually, within a community, it's going to get solved better and faster into a greater depth because we have the combination of many minds working together.
Yeah, absolutely. So you were saying 1,000 men can write one article, and that's 1,000 articles, and it's going to be 1,000 different. Even if it was on the same topic or same 2-3 thoughts, it would be 1,000 different synthesis. 1,000 men would synthesize those thoughts in 1,000 different ways. There's not much out there alone anymore that's a unique thought that hasn't been said at some point through the timeline of human history. The real power is how each of us can bring those 2-3 thoughts together and create a new thought from them. And I think that's where the power and the real space is for everyone to put their thoughts out there. Because if you just look at the sheer volume of writings and speeches and discussions and all that stuff, there's a ton out there, but there is still quite a bit of space left in between all those thoughts to go create new ideas and new approaches and new solutions.
Absolutely. You also see that different people's way of approaching the problem, even if their answer is the same, because I do say, all honest men come up with basically the same answer at the end. If we're approaching reality together and we're very objective at what reality is, even if we come from very different starting points, we end up with roughly the same conclusion, because what is real is real. And the difference is that our approach to explaining it can be radically different. And then it will appeal to different groups of people. I have friends who are really good at appealing to one subset of the population. And, my particular audience might not like might not like their approach, their presentation as much.
Right.
And there are people who will like my presentation, who will like their presentation and not like the way I'm presenting it. So we'll attract a different audience. And it's not always a difference of philosophy and beliefs. Sometimes it's a difference simply of aesthetics. Mm-hmm. And people forget that, that preferences matter. Our preferences matter. And if we prefer a certain way of presenting things, so there are some brilliant presenters out there who swear a lot. A lot of my audience would probably stop watching if I started swearing a lot. It's extremely rare, I swear. And that's just who I am. I'm not doing that to attract a certain audience, but because of that, I'm able to appeal to a certain group of people. Right. And then there's other people, if they don't hear any swearing, this sounds kind of weird to them. That will appeal to them. They get a few good swear words in there, and it's going to increase the impact that it makes on them. And so it's not just a matter of different pieces of information. It's a matter of these different aesthetics. And this is important because it will appeal to different types of men. And, I also talk to women. So there's that overlap, like what appeals to men won't necessarily appeal to women and vice versa. And even within my own work, some of my videos, very popular with women, men don't like them. And vice versa. I'll do a tweet and I'll see all kinds of women go, yeah, good job, blah, blah, blah. And then a bunch of men go, I don't like this, And then I will tweet, because I often do this a couple of days apart so people don't catch on. I'll make mirror tweets. So one says that the problem is, one of the big problems of the world is men doing this to women. And another one is women doing this to men. And they're a mirror of each other because there's similar behavior. And then I'll put them both out there and I'll see what happens. Normally, the one criticizing men is universally met with praise. And the one criticizing women is, the women hate it, simps hate it. And the guys that like it, they just go, yeah, that's cool. And then they scroll on. So it really is interesting getting these different results. And I think that wide net that we cast out there, I go to 21 convention and the speakers there's a massive range. There are speakers there that people in my audience find incredibly annoying.
Right.
And then there are speakers there that people in my audience completely agree with everything they say. But that's one of the powers of these events now. We're starting to take this wide range of ways of reaching out to men, and we're getting them together in one place. And the funny thing is that the core messages are almost all the same.
Yep.
Take personal responsibility for yourself. Become strong enough physically, mentally, emotionally to do what you need to do in life and become a whole man. That's a huge part of the message that is out there for almost all of them. And it's again, honest men end up with the same basic set of conclusions if they follow truth long enough.
Yeah. The aesthetic is an interesting one because people are going to resonate with who closely aligns to themselves, right? So if I look at someone and they look like me and they're saying things that I like, that resonate with me, yeah, this guy knows what he's talking about. I'm going to listen to more of his stuff. If there's a person that doesn't look like me or doesn't look like how I like other people to look, whatever, maybe I don't listen to them as closely. So yeah, there's definitely a part of that as well. There's an audience for every person.
Absolutely. Yeah. I hear Beard Report. Yeah. I immediately think, yeah, I got a beard. I got to go listen to that. and that was a purely aesthetic choice.
Yeah.
I wonder how many great advices I've missed by overlooking the aesthetic part. But the reality is I'm not going to do that because checking aesthetics is a shortcut way to find people that probably are on the same track as you.
Right.
And so we're always going to use those. There's that saying that, what is it? Prejudice are usually right. So if we all the word really means is you prejudge something. So we prejudge that something called the Beard Report is probably for men, about men, and male and positive towards men, and definitely worth my time to check out. Versus something like the male feminist or something. An aesthetic choice is going to make me immediately look at it and reject it.
Right.
Even if it's sarcastic and the reality is a completely different set of advice once you get in there, I'm going to reject it because of the aesthetics. The same way that if I click on someone's relationship advice and they look softer than their wife,
right,
I'm not going to listen to their relationship advice because it doesn't match my aesthetic understanding of what a man and a woman should be. And that sounds very shallow, except those aesthetics are partially the result of philosophy and values.
For sure. Yeah, it definitely shapes it.
Yeah, it shapes it. I mean, some of it's just personal preference, but a lot of it is shaped by our values. And so it is really a great shortcut. It's been a wonderful time talking to you today, Christopher.
Yeah, man, I've enjoyed it. This has been really cool.
Yeah, this is awesome. We're rounding up around the end of our time now. Was there anything you wanted to share, especially about how people can get a hold of you? And if they want to talk to you more, is there a way they can do that?
Yeah. So the website, TheBeardReport.com, is a great place to check out my writing and what I got going on. On Twitter at TheBeardReport. I post on Instagram at @the_BeardReport. There's a mailing list I put together, so I send out transmissions directly to the initiated population every Thursday and Sunday. And if you sign up for that, you'll have my email address, and we can talk directly from there.
Excellent. Thank you very much, Chris. Take care, and I hope we get to see each other in person one day and compare beards.
Right on, Noah. Thanks, man.
Have a good day. Bye.
Yeah, you too.
Thank you for watching our video, and I hope it inspired you to take action in your life. Please subscribe to our channel and like this video to get more agency building content. The real secret sauce is in our newsletter. Click on the link in the video description below to sign up. I promise I won't flood your inbox, and anything that we do send you will be of high value.